Hello, and welcome to another podcast from Becoming a Health Coach. I am your host, Megan McCrory. I'm a certified international health coach. I studied at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, known as III, IIN. Alrighty, good off to a good start. I completed my training in 2018. I've been coaching ever since while I was working in the corporate world. And since last year, I have quit my corporate job and I am doing full-time solo entrepreneurship. And yeah, here I am to talk to you today about Sparketypes, because I should also mention that I am a certified Sparketype advisor. And you probably clicked on this going, what's Sparketypes? What is that? Because it is a fairly new thing in the world of personal development, understanding yourself better, knowing yourself better, self improvement, etc. So, that's what I'm going to talk about today. So, what are Sparketypes? Sparketypes were developed by Jonathan Fields, and he has a team. They're called the Spark Endeavors team. You might also know Jonathan Fields from his podcast, The Good Life Project, and he hangs around with people like Gretchen Rubin, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. And Jonathan has written a couple books about the Career Renegade, and of course the book Sparked, which talks about the different kinds of Sparketypes. So what is a Sparketype? The Sparketypes are your unique imprint for work that makes you come alive. And why is this important? Well, it's important because when you are doing work or anything requiring effort that brings you energy and joy and flow and happiness and a sense of purpose, the world is a better place. Let's just put it this way. And that's actually what Jonathan Fields' mission is to have everybody doing work that invigorates them and sparks them, and the world would be a quite different place than what it is today. So, Sparketype is just a little portmanteau between spark and archetype. So, Sparketype, and it starts with an assessment. Now, the team has done a really good job with this assessment, and I should back up and say this is essentially a personality profile tool. But, a big but, there's a whole lot more that goes with this, which is why I'm so excited about it and why I want to share it with you as health coaches or consultants or wherever you're going to go in terms of the self-improvement area of people's lives, personal development. I think this is a fantastic tool to use and understand. And at the end, I will also give you, some details on how to become a certified Sparketype advisor. It begins with the assessment, and the assessment takes about 15 to 20 minutes, and it is like a dynamic assessment. It's not like 100 questions and that's it. So the questions, you might feel like, oh, haven't I answered that question already 2 times or something like that? And that is because this assessment is dynamic, and it wants to make sure that it's getting the exact right information from you and to clarify things that might be a little unclear, because at the end of this assessment, you are going to get your Sparketype profile. And there are going to be 3 Sparketypes associated with you, and that's your unique profile. The first is your primary Sparketype, the second is your shadow, and the third is your anti-Sparketype. So there are 10 Sparketypes altogether, and Jonathan has said that he doesn't like the fact that there's 10, but there are 10. I did a lot of research with him, interviewing a lot of people in general about what sparks someone and what's the definition of being sparked. And then they've collated all this data into these 10 different variations of sparked work or Sparketypes. When you get your assessment, you get your primary and your shadow. Now, what does that mean? Your primary Sparketype is the kind of work that when you do that work, you can get into flow. You have a feeling or a sense of purpose, meaningfulness. You are expressing that full potential of what you can do. You're engaged, you're enlightened, you know what I mean? So it's just that overall feeling of like, wow, I can do this. The shadow is your second. That's your number 2. And they work together a lot of times. Your primary and your shadow, they kind of feed off of each other. And then your anti is the thing that the work or the effort that you do that requires the biggest lift from you, that requires the most effort, drains you potentially, Doesn't mean you don't like to do it, doesn't mean you're not good at it. It just means that it takes you a bit more energy in order to do that thing, or energy afterwards to recover from doing that thing. So to give you an example, my Sparketype profile is my primary is advisor, which is coaching essentially. And my secondary is essentialist, which is kind of bringing order to chaos, which I love to do. And the third one, my anti is nurturer, which is obviously somebody who cares for somebody else. When we were doing the training, and I was in the first cohort for the certified Sparketype advisors, and a lot of people were nervous about having it. How can I be a good coach if my anti is nurturer? And it's beautiful because it doesn't mean that I don't care about people. It just means that it's a bigger lift for me. Like when I have to care for people, or when I get emotionally involved, or even just in general, caring for somebody, it just takes a bigger lift for me. So it doesn't mean that I don't love people. It doesn't mean I don't care for people. It just means that I might need more time for myself afterwards to kind of re-energize myself. So obviously, one of the things that came out of this is really like career profiles. So people think like, oh, if nurturer is my primary, then I should be a caregiver, a nurse, a doctor, a social worker, or somebody in the caring field. You can. That's yeah, but it doesn't always need to be that way. So you can find those types of roles in all different types of industries. So that's an aside, but a lot of people when they hear this type of thing and they hear work, they think paid work. And actually in the Sparketype body of work, paid work is one of the types of work that you can do, but also hobbies is another kind of work. So we're talking anything that requires like effort, right? So hobbies require effort, learning pathways. So if you're a student or you like to continuously learn things or whatever, that's another effort. And then the fourth one is like roles or devotions. So your role as a parent, or your role as a spouse, or your role in your community, or your religious community. It doesn't matter. There's also effort in those. You could be a little league coach. That's a role and it requires effort. But okay, so you get the idea that work is not just paid work, but it's really anything that you put effort into. So we have our profile. And for most personality profile things, that's kind of where it stops. They give you they take your email address, they send you something in the email about your personality, you read it and you go, "Yes, that's me. That's me. Yes, 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 I get it. I get it. I get it." Great. Same thing here with Sparketype. So you get a high level view of your profile. You can read the book to read about the different Sparketypes. And they just recently introduced this premium profile, which is a 60-page in-depth profile about your unique Sparketype. But that to me is good. But what takes it to another level is the amount of work that this team has done in order to that is just the beginning. That is just the seed, that is the start point to make amazing changes in your life, to get more of that type of work or effort into your life that brings you alive, that brings you truly some joy and happiness and flow. And that's what I want to get into next. Okay. All right. So now what's the next thing? And this is where certified Sparketype advisors come in. And this is why I think that you guys listening to this podcast might find this as an interesting avenue for you to explore, because people who are coaches tend to try to like get certifications all over the place. And one of the things I recommend as a new coach is, if you're not sure what your niche is, like if you're not sure really where you want to market yourself, or you feel a little bit like lost in coaching world. And I think finding your niche takes time, right? And how do you find your niche if you don't have people to coach, etc.? So I feel like suggesting something like certified Sparketype advisor is a great first place to start for people who need a little bit more structure and understanding. And also they don't want to you don't need to create everything yourself. Now the training is intense, and they're actually refining the training for this. It will go over several weeks. It is quite an intense training. and the team is amazing. But let me tell you about what it is that you can do with your clients or for yourself, because I love this stuff, how we can use the Sparketypes to help our clients. Okay, now imagine you are a certified Sparketype advisor and somebody comes to you and they have their Sparketypes. So, what do we do with that? The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to dive deeper into understanding what the Sparketypes are. And there's a whole, I think there's 10 modules in this area about diving deeper into the Sparketypes. And what do we mean by that? The very first thing is you have something called a spark conversation. This is literally just talking with each other about and helping the client articulate and having them think about, like, what does this mean for them? What do they feel? What do they notice? What comes to light for them? It's a reflection. They're just kind of digging in and understanding what that means for them. Like, what does this profile mean? Do they agree? Do they disagree? I had some really interesting feedback. One lady who was like, I don't want this to be my profile because I know I'm like this and I don't want to be like this. Right. So it's like, but then we talked, she saw herself as this was a negative thing. And I'm like, no, this isn't a negative thing. That's a mindset shift, that you need to work with your client. But it's interesting the different perspectives. So the first thing is that, you just dig in, you start talking about that. And then you move through the rest of these modules and you can pick and choose what feels good for you and your client. One of those is a exercise on the partnership between the primary and shadow and how those work together. There's another thing called 7-day sparked awareness exercise, where after you've had that sort of sparked conversation for 7 days, the client tries to identify in their life the different type of work that gets them sparked, right? Like they might notice, like, oh, the time just went by right now. What was I doing? Because I feel really was in flow, right? And flow is one of the key triggers to understanding, like, oh, that must have been something that I was really getting energy from because I was in flow. And they collect this information over the week. And then you can talk about this and you can analyze that and they learn more about themselves. But they've started to build and started to do that awareness exercise for themselves. And as a coach, this is a big part of coaching is helping people to uh, learn how to be aware of themselves and learn how to notice things in their life and then be able to apply learnings from those things that they notice. Then we go into a bit deeper into what's called the Sparketype expression inventory. And that is a bit of a bigger exercise where the client will go back in history and they'll go back through those 4 different types of work: paid work, roles and devotions, uh, hobbies, and learning pathways. And they'll go back in their memory and they'll try to remember, and they're going to start creating a little inventory of all the projects, the people, the tools, the things that they were doing that brought them flow. And what that does is that begins to show them a thread of common things between all of these different areas that will help enlighten them further on, oh, it doesn't matter if I'm with people or by myself or whatever, but if this particular topic is what I'm talking about or thinking about, then I get excited about that. Okay, so they learn something about themselves. And then at the end of this kind of dive in deep in Sparketypes phase is the canvas, the Spark canvas. And there's a few other exercises, but this is the biggest one. And this is the one that takes you even further. So the Spark canvas is basically a visual profile of your client, of themselves on a one page. And it starts with the Sparketype profile. You add your expression inventory, you add your sparked super skills, you add, okay, am I an introvert, an extrovert, or an ambivert? Do I prefer talking one to one or one to many? So it's kind of like a collection of personality type of things around this person on one piece of paper. And why do we do this? We do this because having it on one piece of paper in front of you as a client or as a person doing this is very powerful, right? So you see yourself on this piece of paper and you know that it's kind of like your recipe. It's your recipe for success. right? In order to find the work that brings you alive. And so at the end of this diving deep, you have this beautiful canvas, this recipe for yourself. And then you have a choice. And the choice is to do something about it or to do nothing about it. And you can stop there. You don't need to do anything about it. If you say, I'm happy with my life, everything is going great, I feel sparked all the time, this is awesome, I learned so much about myself, I'm going to call it here, I'm going to call it a day. That's fine. But the Sparked team went further. So there are more things that you can do. And again, as a new coach, this is great because you can have a very long engagement with your client, right? So you can start with something short. You can start with a quick Sparketype. What is Sparketypes? Let's talk about your Spark conversation type stuff. So you can have something small that gets them in the door. And then this program goes and goes and goes. And there's opportunities to exit at each point, right? Based on what your client needs and what you're prepared to offer. So let's say your client is like, this is awesome. So far, I've learned so much about myself and I want to go further. I am not feeling sparked every day. What do I want to do about it? And that takes you into the next part, which is where you're doing this kind of experimental phase. So, first of all, they can use the canvas to evaluate their current situation. What's their current life look like and how where is the disconnect or the dissonance against what they've written down on their canvas? Um, let's for example, like if their archetype is somebody who is um, let's say doesn't like to perform, like their anti is performer, like means they don't like to get up in front or perform in front of people. And yet every month they have to get up and do some kind of presentation or something. Um, then they know like, oh, that's a lot of lift for something that takes a lot of energy for me. So they can evaluate that situation and they can say, okay, well, that's the current role that I'm in right now. It's not too bad, but let's then work in some before and after like alone time so that you can get better, like because you can renew that energy. So that's just an example, but that you can look at all the different aspects of your life and then start to tweak things to okay. So that's where you're not changing anything big. You're going, okay, what's my current situation and how can I tweak to have a better energy in terms of every day, whether I'm sparked or not. Then you do that and you're working with your client. You can maybe that's a month, maybe that's 2 months where you meet once or twice a month and they talk about the different types of things that they're doing and you're working with them to improve those different areas and to analyze what's going on, and as a coach you're guiding them to notice how things are shifting and so on. Then maybe they get to a steady state, or maybe they can't change what they're doing in their current role, or maybe it's not enough. Then the second phase of kind of choosing to make change is to do a bit of a bigger shift. So maybe that is changing roles within the same company or beginning a different kind of career path within the same company. You know what I mean? Something like that where you or maybe it's not related to their paid work, but maybe they need to start implementing something else in like a hobby or a different role or devotion that would add more of that sparked into their life. That's another way to approach it. So it's not only about getting rid of something, but it's also about adding. And that would be like kind of the second stage where it's maybe a bigger shift. And then the third is obviously kind of like the nuclear option where you kind of go, okay, I've tried the little things, I've tried the medium things, and now I need to try the bigger things. And I need to like quit my job or go back to school, get a different education, or choose a different path. And I can tell you from experience because that's basically what I did from 2017 to 2021. In that time frame, I did those steps. That was before I knew what Sparketypes were. But how I can relate to that, I was not happy at work. I wasn't prepared to quit my job. And that's how I discovered actually health coaching, because was not happy, but I needed something else in my life that was going to balance the what I didn't like about my corporate work. And that's how I found health coaching. Because actually I thought, well, I'll go back to school and be a nutritionist. And then I thought, well, yeah, that's a big, I would have to quit or get a really flexible position at work. That wasn't going to happen. And that's a big lift. That's a couple year commitment. That's a lot of money commitment and time. I wasn't sure about that. So I did the smaller option and said, okay, I can do this health coaching certification while I'm still at work. So I did that small shift. I added something. It was amazing. And I realized, okay, there are things out there besides what I'm doing at my corporate job that actually really light me up and bring me alive. And then in my next stage, my middle stage was after I did my coaching, then I started to bring my coaching into my corporate world. And I was pleasantly surprised that there were people in my corporate world that were really happy and supportive of that. And I was able to do more things with the health initiative inside the company and so on and so forth. So then I started bringing that extra inside the corporate world. And that actually really revolutionized my work because I was able to practice, I was able to do these things at work, even though before I had a big client base, right? But time goes by, and at some point that wasn't enough anymore. At some point, um, I said, no, I need to get bigger. I need to go bigger. And it took me maybe about a year and a half to really come up with the idea of how I wanted to go bigger. So it wasn't something that flipped the switch overnight. It was like, how can I make a living as a health coach or as a coach in general? And, thinking about how I could scale and stuff like that. And yeah, I eventually said, "Okay, I think I have a good idea. Uh, okay, I've been saving my money since 2018 and I'm going to make the plunge." And then I was up to that third nuclear option of quitting my job and starting my own company and really trying to make it happen. Now, there's probably could have been a partial step in there of moving down. So a lot of people are like, "Well, why didn't you just like go down to part-time, maybe 80% or 60%?" So in Switzerland and in Europe, it's really common you can go 80%, 60%, 50%. 80%, 60% is usually more likely in the type of role that I was in, which would meant 1 day a week I wouldn't have to go into work. But realistically for me, that wasn't an option. Number one, because I because having only 1 day a week extra, it's like, okay, but then I would probably be too exhausted, and if I did it on Monday, there was a lot of reasons why that wasn't gonna work, but primarily is because when I approached my boss about this and said, "What would you think if I went down to 80%?" They were like, "Well, you'd still have to get all your work done." It wasn't like they were gonna take away 20% of my workload so I could do 80% work. No, they wanted to know how I was gonna fit 100% of work into 80% of my time. So when I get a reaction like that, I'm like, okay, that's not really possible. But in some cases, if you have right management who is really flexible and want to see you succeed, that's definitely something that you could do. That partial step between full time and leaving, there's definitely a middle road in there that you could take. So anyway, that's my little story about how that kind of worked for me before I did Sparketypes. And now I can fully endorse this kind of change because it is more gradual. It allows you to settle in to a change and see how you like it. Um, if because your perception of if you like something is different when you actually might like something. So back to the Sparketypes, the whole point is that now you have this canvas and you as a Sparketype advisor can help your client walk through that process. And as a health coach, especially, this is still aligned because, a big part of people's life is work. And if that work is not on point, if that work is not in a good place, that affects a lot of their other health. It can affect their mental health, it can affect their physical health, and so on. So I do definitely see that this is tying in, although you can make a whole business for yourself just being a Sparketype advisor. So then there are more things that go on from there in terms of like that's kind of the flow, right? Get to know it, make a decision, and test out these things, and changes with your life. So I think that that's the basics. there, it was very very high level, but I did want to explain this to you guys because, as I said at the top, if you are just starting out and you don't know where to go, this type of coaching program where they give you the content, they give you the training, they give you the certification, they give you everything that you need, um, and the support. They have a really great support system. It's just awesome. So I am going to leave the code. So I would get a referral fee for this, just like I do for IIN for people who add me as a referral for IIN. And that is something that I strongly encourage all of you to do. If you are a coach, use affiliate marketing to your advantage because especially for things for tools, for companies that you really are passionate about because you're supporting that company, but you're also getting paid to help grow that company. So I'm not at all shy to tell you that if you want to explore the certified Sparketype advisor, which I strongly recommend that you do, because it's a great tool. Even if you don't run those types of profiles, you can incorporate the Sparketypes into your platform or into your program anyway. So even if you don't want to tout it as this, you can use that content. Um, yeah, uh, click my link or use my code, which will be in the description, and tell them I referred you. Then you're helping me out a lot because, to tell you honestly, and nobody talks about this, I am not making any money yet. Okay, a lot of people want to say, "Oh, this is great," and it is. Being my own boss is awesome. Every day I get to get up and do things that I love to do and even the things I love to hate to do. But because I know it's all towards something that in general that I have passion about and that I love. So if you are going to join IIN or if you want to be the certified Sparketype advisor or if you're in any of my platforms and you see a link and it's interesting for you, do that for me. That would be awesome. But if you just want to talk to me about being a certified Sparketype advisor, or you want to see a little bit more behind the scenes, what that might look like, definitely hit me up. I'm more than happy to talk with you about it. I will leave all the links to the Sparketype assessment and the book, and there's also a podcast, of course. All of those things will be available to you. And yeah, that's it for today. Do leave me some comments if any of this sparked your interest and you want me to dive deeper into something or anything of this, the different 10 types. I didn't even talk about all the different 10 types because yeah, that would be a lot for one episode. But if you want me to go into deeper with that, let me know in the comments. Drop me an email, becominghealthcoach@gmail.com. I'm always around. You can find me anywhere. And I think that's it for today. Uh, have a great one. We'll see you around. Bye.